Dr. George Grant is in the studio.
That's all you need to say.
That's all.
That's it.
That's it. House. We'll see you later. Thanks for joining us on the Sunday special. Of course, Pastor Toby, Chuck Knox, I'm the Water Boy, and Dr. Grant is in the studio.
Which camera did you look at?
All of them.
I was looking at you. You just kind of did this
You see what
little.
Toby does the scan thing.
It's all dark in there. I can't see anything.
Hey, make sure you guys subscribe to our magazine. It's coming out. The first issue is coming out March 1st. That's March 1st. So make sure you just subscribe before March 1st so you get the magazine.
You know what? This is really the magazine is so important right now.
It really is.
It is.
With
it
everything
is
being canceled.
It is cancel proof, and it's low tech, but it's high
Unless
value.
the USPS cancels us,
Yeah.
which is kind of hard for them to do, then we can't mail it to you.
It's so important to get
Yeah,
the
it's
mag.
pretty hard. So make sure you guys subscribe to that. We're excited. This issue that's coming out is going to be on laughter and
Ooh.
kind of in preparation for Easter also. So Francis Fukushon is going to have actually Easter recipe in there talking about it and everything.
Easter is the great cosmic joke on all evil.
That's right.
It's the point at which God's
It is
laughter.
the laughter of heaven.
It is.
Amen.
Absolutely.
Amen. And then, of course, we're going to be in
We're going to be
Where is
Rapid
that
City. Rapid
See,
City.
you make him nervous.
Rapid City, South Dakota.
I'm looking
April
forward to this.
29th, 30th, and 1st. We still got a couple headliners that we haven't announced yet.
That's right.
We're excited
Love
about that.
God, sing psalms, defy tyrants. Join us with Governor Kristi Noem, the only governor in the union to read the Constitution.
Free. Yep, free. Lastly, DeafWire. Make sure you guys go to deafwire.com. We're actually channeling all our news articles that we kind of read throughout the week to deafwire.com. So it's a great place to go. And it's kind of our aggregator for you and everything.
DEFT. Deft.
What does deft mean?
It means skillful.
Let's ask the doctor.
Ooh.
What does deft mean?
It
good.
means agile.
Sounds like my basketball
It
game.
means agile. Oh, now, come on.
Wow.
Hey, we also want to give a shout out to a new church plant in Leavenworth, Kansas. Christ Church, Leavenworth, Kansas. If you're anywhere, I don't know where Leavenworth, Kansas is, but you have a map. You can check it out. If you're looking for a good church, we know Daniel Spratt. He's one of the guys that's helping start that church.
Yep.
He's good people.
check
Him and
it
his
out.
wife and kids are great people.
And it's called,
Love you guys.
And you can follow them at Reforming
Leavenworth.
Yes.
on Gab and the Twitters and things.
I know for sure
Definitely
Twitter.
Facebook too.
Also,
Yeah.
we want to give a shout out to Antioch Classical, AntiochClassical.org. Check them out. They're in, oh no, I didn't practice this beforehand. Chickasha. I'm going with Chickasha, Oklahoma.
It's all right. It's Oklahoma, so you can pronounce it however you want.
Chickasha. Check them out. AntiochClassical.org. Classical Christian
That's a
school
Texas joke.
there.
It is.
I was born in
Did you-
Muskogee, bro. Watch
did you-
yourself.
Did you fall out? Where
Watch
you born?
yourself.
What'd you say?
Muskogee. I was
Are you
born in
speaking in
Muskogee.
tongues again?
Yeah, okay.
You an Okie?
Yeah, I'll unbutton this real
I
quick.
just now found out you an Okie. Let's go.
Okay, bro. After the show. Let's
It's
do
been
this show.
4 years and we didn't know this.
I don't know.
Muskogee, Oklahoma.
Man, it's our Red River.
I control your microphone. I don't know if you know that. I control the microphone.
He's got buttons.
That's funny.
He can
Well,
cancel you.
It's our Red River. That's all I gotta say.
Better believe
That's all I gotta say. You know, I got. I'm not going to go there.
Save it.
So there is an app for everything, right?
There's.
There's an app for everything.
Like the Fight Laugh Feast app.
Oh, that's right. You can sign.
That's
you can
right.
get that. Sure.
Is it on your
He's
phone,
coming
Dr.
in.
Grant?
It is on my phone.
Look at that.
And it's
That's
where
great.
you'll be able to catch George Grant's new podcast.
He's coming on. He's coming on the
Fight Laugh
network.
Feast network.
That wasn't part of my news segment, so you kind of messed up my segue a little bit.
Okay, try it again.
There's an app for that.
There's an app for everything.
What kind of app for what?
So, you know, the coronavirus, you know, that thing that's been
Never
going
heard
around?
of her.
Is that still
Never
real?
heard of her? It's still, I don't know. We never know if it's really real.
Biden's president now. I thought it was all over.
Well, I'm going to get there in a second. But they developed, in China, they've developed an app that kind of feeds your certificate of vaccination to other apps. And so, like, your ride-sharing app. And so when you go into a ride share, you got that certificate gets fed to the ride-sharing app, and they now know that
if you have been vaccinated.
So any public place you go, you have to show your app and show your certificate.
Well,
on
they're
that
communists.
App. And so the
But
U.S.
you know, Clear is working on the same thing for the U.S.
Clear, yes.
They're working with the NBA, and they.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
NBA's communist too. Of
course.
Ticketmaster's talked about this, but what's crazy about China is they actually are feeding other apps.
Yeah.
So the way
That-
theirs is connected to make sure
Right.
that it goes to all the other apps that you use.
You
Right.
think there's any security issues there? Any privacy concerns?
No.
Any privacy concerns there?
Nah.
So they're working on that. But here in the U.S., what's amazing, we might not need the app.
No.
Because what's amazing is you'll look that the infection rates have plummeted about 30% since, look at that date, about January 20th.
It's a Biden miracle.
You see that January 20th date?
Yeah.
Everything kind of peaks, and then since then it's plummeted 30%.
Yeah.
And you look, it's the last date is February 2nd. The map's a little jumbled at the bottom.
A few days out.
But it's February 2nd.
Yeah.
And you look, you kind of trace that line back to about November, 4th.
Okay.
Where it kind of equals the same data and back in November 4th.
Election day.
Yep, and that's where we're at now. We're back to November numbers.
Okay.
And so you kind of see where it peaks, but then you kind of really see about February 20th is where it kind of peaked. You can kind of, again, the map's jumbled. About February 15th, February 20th is where it kind of peaked in the data. And so now we're 30% down.
I think you mean January.
Excuse me.
But
Thank
here's
you.
the great news.
Yep.
There is no flu. The coronavirus has destroyed flu season.
Obliterated.
Yeah, I've noticed that the numbers are actually zero for flu, and everything's coronavirus.
Yeah, yeah. We have 250,000 people who typically die every year from flu.
Right.
None.
Yeah.
This year.
Right.
Zero.
And it's amazing because
I should have had that chart up here. I should have had that chart.
It's a miracle.
It is.
well, now it looks like you can politicize the flu too, though. If they can continue to do this, right? If they can do this with the coronavirus, what other sickness can they politicize and manipulate you with?
Well, here's the great one. The climate czars are talking about possible lockdowns.
For what?
I guess if it gets too hot, too cold,
Why not?
too much rain,
Right.
Why not?
Really?
something.
Have they really said?
Well, I saw
my
some.
goodness.
I saw
There's
some
an article in the London Spectator today
Okay.
about the possibility of climate lockdowns.
Wow.
I saw that they actually noticed that some temperatures rose during the lockdowns.
Yeah.
and
Because
they-
the air was cleaner.
And they speculate that it was because that the air was cleaner, less particulate in the air, less deflection of the sun's rays. So it was actually warmer because people were not out.
But haven't they been selling us that we need to make the air cleaner so global warming will stop?
Hey, Gabe, stop asking
Whoa,
questions
dude.
like that. That's
Whoa, logic.
Hey, Dr. Grant, I do want to ask you though. You brought up the czar. What about the reality czar? Have you thought
heard about that?
Have you heard about that
I've
at all?
applied.
Hey, if you're going to be the reality czar, I'm totally for it.
No. Just remember the next reality czar after Dr. Grant.
Then
is
we
not
have a
gonna be
problem. That's
So great.
true. You're true.
Remember the precedent.
You're right.
Let's
You're
not
right.
do
Let's
it.
not set the precedent. You're right. You're right.
That's hilarious.
But as that's become an option now, what kind of place do you think that's going to take us to?
Well, first of all, the great thing is that nothing so far that Biden has done has been law.
Right.
Yeah.
It's all been orders.
Executive orders.
That's
And
right.
so the creation of these kinds of things can be just as easily reversed.
Okay.
And so it really is a kind of madness,
Right.
obviously. But the truth is that stuff like that doesn't have to affect us on the ground in our callings every day. It's worrisome in a sense. But what happens in Washington really doesn't change what happens at my house and in my neighborhood if I'm doing my job.
Yeah.
At a local level.
Did you see North Dakota and I think South Dakota has a version of this where there's a bill being put forward that they don't basically any of Biden's executive orders that they won't follow. So the bill's just
That are
basically
not
saying,
constitutional or something
That's
like that.
right. Yeah.
Yeah, there are two great tools that the Constitution gives us that we hardly ever use. One is magistral interpositionalism, which is what they're doing. They're
Lesser magistrates. Doctrine of lesser magistrates.
Is just saying that's not constitutional. We're not enforcing it.
Yeah.
And the other is jury nullification.
Right.
That's where the jury says, not only are we acquitting this defendant, but we're saying that the law itself was a violation of law.
Yeah.
So when you go to court, it's both the law and the defendant who are on trial.
On trial.
So jury nullification, the jury can say, sorry, no, that law is inappropriate.
So if a jury says that law is inappropriate or not legal or not right, does that law just go off the books then when the jury does that?
It doesn't. But what it does is it sets a precedent
That's what I was thinking,
for someone to then
Repeal the law.
Repeal the law.
Right.
Okay.
And it's at least it's not supposed to just do that. But we've seen the opposite happen sometimes where,
absolutely,
like Roe versus Wade, for example, where you have a court ruling.
Which is a violation of the 9th Amendment of the Constitution, which says that there are certain rights that adhere to the people, that the Constitution doesn't regulate and government cannot regulate.
Right. That's interesting.
Well, we don't really listen to that anymore.
Do people read the Constitution?
I mean,
hold on.
That what you just said
let me
meant
check.
nothing.
I've got a Constitution right here.
Oh, fire paper.
How about that?
That's a fire starting paper.
It's in there. The 9th Amendment's still there.
Well, I think
still there.
one of the reasons why there's so much political angst right now in our society is because it's kind of all boiling up at the Fed level.
Right.
So if
that's absolutely.
the relief valve for our political angst is actually states' rights.
Absolutely.
And even counties and cities.
Yeah, and lesser magistrates.
If governors and lesser magistrates will have the gumption. But of course, part of the problem is that the feds control the faucet for budgets.
Right.
Dollars.
Right.
Yeah.
And if they cut off the flow of dollars to, say, the highway department or, whatever.
Well, and right now,
that's the pressure.
Right now, they keep pumping trillions and trillions of dollars, particularly into COVID stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
Do you think that's
keeping the states? That's incentivizing the states to shut down.
Well, that's our own governor.
Right. We have this in Idaho right now.
Our own governor just rebuked the legislative branch because of the fact that they were saying, "Hey, we don't need the emergency funds."
Our representatives are in there, hopefully about to pass some resolutions ending all emergency orders in the state.
Right.
And our governor, Republican governor, so-called, has rebuked the legislature, saying, "But if you do that, the money stops coming." I mean, he just said,
He basically that's exactly what he said.
The money will stop coming into Idaho. Do you really want to do that?
But the most insulting thing about that was that who sends the legislators there?
I did.
We do.
Yeah.
So who is he really talking to?
Us.
He's like, shame on you guys.
Yeah.
He's rebuking us because of what we sent them there to do that exact thing.
Exactly.
Don't you want free money?
Exactly. It's like, well,
don't you want businesses to reopen? Don't you want industry to start?
No, he wants that government
up again?
cheese. He wants that federal cheese.
Exactly.
and that's what he's saying. We'll
So
lose the
stand in
federal
line.
But South Dakota,
Yep.
they rejected all of it.
That's why we're going to the rally.
That's right.
Yep. Well, so part of the problem here is our governor also in Idaho didn't really put up a fight. So we passed HB 500, which is legislation saying that men cannot play in women's sports.
Yeah.
in Idaho.
Yeah, we passed that
we
here.
did
We
pass
passed
that.
that here. The governor signed it, kind of a token sign, and then our attorney general didn't fight it. It got challenged by LGBT firm.
As you would expect.
Yeah, and our AG just
Buckled.
flopped. I had to change my words. Flopped there. And so now Rand Paul is fighting with the education secretary that's up for nomination
About this very topic.
Should be forced to allow boys to compete in girls' sports. If you're confirmed, will you enforce that Office of Civil Rights opinion?
Hello, Senator. Thank you for the question. I understand that there are a lot of concerns about that. If confirmed, it's my responsibility and my privilege to make sure that we're following our civil rights of all students. And that includes activities that they may engage in high school or in athletics.
What do you think in general about boys running in girls' track meets like they've been doing in Connecticut?
I think that it's critically important that education systems and educators respect the rights of all students, including students who are transgender, and that they are afforded the opportunities that every other student has to participate in extracurricular activity.
Does it bother you that like the top 20% of boys running in track meets beat all of the girls in the state, and that it, would be, completely destroy girls' athletics? The girls are being pushed out. They don't make the finals in the state meet. They don't get college scholarships. That it's really detrimental to girls' sports. Do you worry about having boys running girls' track meets?
I recognize and appreciate the concerns and the frustrations that are expressed.
So bad.
As Commissioner of Education, have had conversations with families who have felt the way you just described it, and families of students who are transgender. So I understand that this is a challenge. I look forward to working with you and others to.
Do you think it's fair to have boys running in the girls' track meet?
I think it's appropriate I think it's the legal responsibility of schools to provide opportunities for students to participate in activities, and this includes students who are transgender.
So you don't have a problem then with boys running in the girls' track meet, swimming meets, name it. You're okay then with boys competing with girls?
Respectfully, Senator, I think I answered the question. I believe schools should offer the opportunity for students to engage in extracurricular activities, even if they're transgender. I think that's their right.
Should he have said, could you define for me what a boy is? Before having this, because
might have been helpful.
Because the whole thing kept circling around. He kept going back to transgender, but they never defined a boy or a girl at all.
Right.
And so he gave him a way to kind of loop back through that and say, hey, we don't want to treat anybody unfair. We want to give everybody their civil rights. But it's like, you didn't define a boy or a girl at all.
Right. This is crazy.
Well,
it really is crazy that we're having this conversation and the feds are having it, and this high up office is literally giving an out for men to just absolutely wallop girls in the state of Connecticut.
This is abuse, yeah.
And there is a simple answer to this, and that is that if you're transgender, you compete in the races of and with the sports of your biological birth.
Right.
So you're not denying transgender from participating.
No.
You're just saying you can't participate against girls.
Right. The irony of all
chromosome sports.
The irony of all this, of course, is that the Title IX protections, whether it was a good idea to do them or not, initially were there to protect women's sports.
Right.
To say that women can compete in a way so that they're not forced to either try to get into the boys' sports or compete against them.
Well, and part of what it included was if you're going to have X amount of men's sports on your university campus, you need to have X amount of women's sports on university campus.
They were trying to create this equality.
A kind of parity.
Yeah. And I think that we set ourselves up for problems when you have the government regulating all of that to begin with.
That's right.
Sure.
That's right.
But now they're just completely allowing that to destroy the very thing it was created to do.
I mean, Ron Paul should be horse laughing that guy.
Oh, yeah.
Like, that should be his response. I mean, he's kind of almost taking him too seriously.
Yeah.
Well, but you can see he's horrified.
He is.
He is absolutely horrified.
Absolutely.
And he's refusing to use the language of
boys, girls. I appreciate that 100%.
And that's a really good thing.
Yeah.
And it was so clear.
It was clear.
So clear.
Boys and girls.
It's clear. Get your kids out of government schools. That's the first clearest thing.
Absolutely.
Go to that Oklahoma classical school.
When we come back, I want to talk to Dr. George Grant about his show that's going to be on the Fight Laugh Feast Network and many more things. We'll come up with a list.
Yeah.
Next.
He don't even know.
There's nothing to talk about. Nothing to talk about.
My name is Jamie Piles. I joined Samaritan in December of 1996, so I'm coming up on 24 years. When people ask me, does it really work? I say, oh, it works fantastic. I send my money to somebody every month. But we had a need with my wife. Spent a little bit of time in the hospital about 3 months ago, and so I had a checklist with about 39 names on it, and 39 checks came in. Some of the cards, some of the things people had to say, it was amazing to watch.
Oklahoma Muskogee. I'm sorry. Did I say
Rub it in.
Man.
Welcome back to Cross Politic on the Fight Laugh Feast Network. With us in the studio, in the house, Dr. George Grant. He's back. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah. My pleasure.
Have you been in the studio before?
I have.
Yes.
Okay, all right. I knew
a couple of times.
Okay.
Was that in the piano shop or was that in this one?
It was in this
It was
one.
Okay.
I was just. I can't believe you guys forgot that. I didn't forget Dr. Grant.
Thank you.
Yeah, you sit next to the man.
Dr. Grant is the pastor of Parish Presbyterian Church down in Franklin, Tennessee. Let's see what else it says here. Director of the King's. I'm not even going to pretend I'm making. Director at King's Meadow Study Center.
You don't know these things.
Chancellor. You're a chancellor, aren't you?
Oh.
Franklin Classical School.
Oh, okay, all right. Founder of both Franklin Classical School, New College Franklin, coordinator of the Chalmers Fund.
Yes.
That's all accurate so far. He's the author of dozens of books in the areas of history, biography, politics, literature, including one on the ACLU.
Yes.
Which you just were telling us about in the break. What's it called?
Trial and Error.
And that's where you could find out a little bit more about jury nullification.
Jury nullification.
So if you're interested in learning more about that, he mentioned that in the first segment. Check out Trial and Error. He's also the author of this book, In the Shadow of Plenty, Biblical Principles for Caring for the Poor. you have pioneered efforts to establish classical Christian schools around the world, actually including in Iraq.
Kurdistan.
Indonesia. Yeah,
Kurdistan. Something else I just heard is that he actually has world records for swimming or something like that?
No.
Okay. All right.
In women's sports?
No, I was...
Oh, you just did that.
Wow.
Really? He's from Texas.
Yes, I know that.
Yes.
That's why we can joke.
When I was in Texas, I did swim collegiately.
Okay.
But in high school, I was involved in a series of trials to pick the Olympic team.
Okay.
It wasn't the Olympic trials, but it was the pre-trials.
Nice. Okay.
You were involved in those.
I was involved.
So you went
in
to the
those,
Olympics?
No, I didn't.
Okay. All right. Cool.
And there were several world records that were broken in my event.
Wow.
Heat after heat after heat. So I actually went under the world record, but I was also beaten.
But you weren't the new record holder.
No.
I got you.
Never.
Okay.
You do know you can identify as a record holder.
Self-identify.
Self-identify.
Yeah.
Perhaps most importantly, you have a wife named Karen.
I do.
And 3 children.
3 children.
And how many grandkids now?
We have 6, all boys.
Oh, wow.
All boys.
Wow. Very good. And do you have
What are the odds?
question for him?
Well, I already know they're baptized.
Okay, all right, just making sure.
I already know that.
And
I baptized every one
You
of them.
did, you?
That's
Yeah.
fantastic. And then right below that, the next most important thing that you need to know about Dr. Grant
Yeah,
is that
baby.
he's got a new show, a new podcast coming on the Fight Laugh Feast Network.
So excited about this.
And it's called
Resistance and Reformation.
Whoa, I didn't even ask you.
I'm excited. I got it, George. I got it.
You can't hardly remember anything, but you remembered that.
Don't worry, Gabe's not going to be on it.
We don't know yet. Resistance
And Reformation.
and Reformation. Okay.
And what's the plan?
Well, it's rooted in the idea of Romans chapter 12, verse 2.
Yeah.
Which simply says, do not be conformed to this world,
Right.
resistance,
Right.
but be transformed by the renewing of your mind so that you may be able to prove or make manifest
Right.
what the will of God is, that which is good and acceptable and perfect.
How to be obedient to God.
Right.
Yeah.
So the plan really it's Knox's idea, which is that we're just going to take times in history where we have these extraordinary lessons that are directly applicable to the present day circumstances that we live in.
Wow.
You hear all the time that we live in unprecedented times.
Yeah.
Well, that's nonsense. If you know history, these are not
No, you're right.
unprecedented times.
You're right.
And so what we've got to do is we've got to remember all of these lessons.
Right.
In 1 Corinthians chapter 10, we are told that all of these things have happened as examples for us so that we will not stumble and fall in the same way that they did.
Yeah.
And immediately following that is what I call a plaque verse. The verse that you find on plaques in Christian bookshops, which says, no temptation has overtaken you, but such as is common to man.
Right.
That's not simply saying that God is going to give you a fire pole escape from any temptation. It's saying, know your history. Know what paths have been taken by others before so that you don't stumble and fall.
So the way
There's a great Paedo communion text in 1 Corinthians chapter 10 also.
That's true.
Yeah.
But the first, so when he says, with the temptation, there will always be a way of escape.
Right.
It's in the context of know your history.
That's exactly
Get out of here.
So the way of escape.
so good.
The way of escape. I mean, so often you read that verse, you see the plaque, it's on the Christian calendar. There's a sunset. There's little puppy dogs playing in the grass. But that it doesn't. We think it means like God is going to randomly, just sort of randomly give you away. Like all of a sudden you're blip, and you don't want to sin anymore.
Yeah, the whole
temptation.
context from verse 1 all the way up to verse 12 is
Know your history.
beware lest you stumble and fall like they did.
And there's a cloud of witnesses there.
Know your
I've
history.
given you all of this
Right.
as your example.
That's the way out.
So, Dr. Grant, can you take and kind of give us a little bit of history and bring us into the modern times so kind of we know how to combat some of the things we're doing? Like just a little sample of the show. Just a little sample.
Well, for instance, the 14th century was the time of the bubonic plague. It was the time of the 100 Years' War. It was the time of the Hanseatic League, a monopolizing of commercial activities all across Northern Europe.
Like Google.
Exactly. Like big tech. Yeah. It was the time of the Babylonian captivity of the church, where serious Christians gave up on the possibility of integrity in the institutional church.
Wow.
So that's 14th century. So it's a terrible, terrible time. At that time, God raises up people like Wycliffe and Huss. Tyndall comes
a little bit later.
A little later.
Let him finish, Gabe.
He's right there on the edge, though. He's on the edge.
Man.
Don't worry. He was born. He was born late.
16th century.
Was he?
16th.
Who am I thinking of? Wycliffe?
Wycliffe, Huss, Gerhard of Grota.
Wycliffe.
And these guys lay the foundations 150 years before Luther and Calvin.
Yeah.
Lay the foundations for what they will do.
Right.
It's a reminder that we have a multi-generational task before us, that we need to do good work in difficult times, and that God will honor that and bring flourishing and flowering in the days to come.
And
we need to know that
That's
stuff.
good.
And
That's really good.
Wasn't Wycliffe particularly? He capitalized on a lot of the innovation that was happening at the time, right? He kind of used Google.
Yeah, and that's one of the secrets of the Reformation. Martin Luther used the invention of the movable type printing press to great effect, to immediately have translations of tracts
and
spread pamphlets everywhere.
Right.
So, the use of new innovations, tools to spread the gospel is a natural part of the call to bring the message to the uttermost parts of the earth.
So did they require masking back in the 14th century?
It's interesting. Quarantine was for sick people.
Imagine that.
Wait.
If someone was
blew my mind.
If someone was asymptomatic, back in those days, it meant that they were well.
Wait.
That they were healthy.
You need to go talk to the CDC. That's what I think.
Maybe we can't have him for our realities are for just a little while. Just for a little while.
Yeah. He's too real.
One of the things I wanted to ask you about, Dr. Grant, was there's a New York Times opinion piece that got me thinking on this a few days ago. I mentioned it on one of our daily news briefs, and I shared it on Deft Wire. But it was police should stop lying to suspects. Was the title of the opinion piece. Police should stop lying to suspects. And it chronicles, which, by the way, is perfectly legal, apparently, for police officers. They can lie to suspects. There's a Supreme Court case that sided with the police back in the 1930s, probably with
liquor and
the mob and so on. But nevertheless, it's still on the books, and so it's perfectly legal for police officers to lie to suspects. And then this opinion piece sort of chronicles a number of horror stories where pummeling suspects with lies over time, they break. And there's a percentage, it's not a gigantic percentage, but it's, I think 10 to 20% people tend to break and confess to crimes they never committed.
Yeah.
And there's the Innocence Project is one that is kind of going through a lot of different.
They've uncovered a lot of
false convictions, but one of the area of their false convictions has to do with people who were lied to by police, and it's a fascinating thing. And I think it's one of those places where probably Christians could team up with liberals, who and say, hey, how about police not lie to suspects anymore? Yeah. To get false convictions, that's evil, that's unjust. But the thing that got me thinking was there was a couple of psychological studies in the story where they were citing how people can be programmed, how pressure works on people, and this you've seen studies about this perhaps also with in abusive relationships and this kind of thing where what we call gaslighting, where lies are just perpetrated under pressure over and over again, and people come to really question what they believe.
Right.
And so,
that's the insidious thing about a lie.
Exactly.
And the father of lies, it is the means by which the world is corrupted.
Right. And so I'm thinking of like cancel culture. I'm thinking of big media, big tech. I'm thinking about the fact that, if you say certain things on Facebook, you get put in Facebook jail like I was last week.
Are you still in Facebook
for 3
jail?
days? I got out.
Okay. Welcome back.
It was 3 days timeout.
Okay.
I thought about it for a while.
Death and resurrection. Death and resurrection.
But
3
I
days.
did not learn my lesson.
You'll
for the
be back.
record. But Twitter, Facebook, they're doing all this censoring. This is why Gab is blowing up right now.
Yeah.
Get on Gab.
But one of the things what's happening, people really are being programmed. I mean, we had a guy we showed a clip last week of the guy who's trying. It was the My Pillow guy, Mike Lindell.
Yeah, Mike Lindell.
And he's trying to say something about Dominion voting machines, and the guy just shouts him down, and then it's gone.
His new video is up, by the way.
That's what I heard. I heard, but there's no voter fraud, no evidence of voter. I mean, they just keep repeating this over and over again. There's no voter fraud, and then there's these penalties.
There's always voter fraud.
That's the thing. That's the thing.
Always.
And so,
ever heard of Mayor Daley?
No. Yes.
The thing that I wanted to ask you about, and we'll have to jump into the next segment to finish this, but the great author Neil Postman wrote this book, Amusing Ourselves to Death,
in 1985.
Yes, and he points out that maybe we've dodged the 1984 bullet. So George Orwell wrote the famous book 1984. We got this picture of sort of these massive police state where everybody's sort of locked down, concentration camp style. Everything is surveillanced by the government.
1930s.
Big Brother runs everything.
Or World War I under Woodrow Wilson in the United States.
And there's these, and you're constantly being programmed what to think. People are saying there's the right answers are just being programmed into you. That's one vision of how things can, it's one dystopic vision where things can go horribly wrong. But Postman points out that we've forgotten about this other fellow named Aldous Huxley, who doesn't get nearly as much airtime, who wrote a book called Brave New World, where he posited a different kind of dystopia where people would basically be enchained, enslaved, imprisoned, but they would do so with pleasure rather than pain.
Centrifugal bumble puppies.
Centrifugal bumble puppies.
He had like several words, like feelies
and the orgy porgy.
The orgy porgy. What do you think about that?
I don't want to say what I think about that. Actually.
But
is that what I think it is?
But the idea is that you suppress a people by smothering them with trivial entertainment.
Right.
You said Netflix?
You nullify the process of thought by overwhelming them with bread and circuses.
And so Neil Postman in Amusing Ourselves to Death, he argues that he thinks we're veering into a Huxleyan dystopia with modern media, mass media, and he's writing even before Twitter and Facebook.
This is 1985.
Yeah, and so but he's seeing it in mass media even there on the news where you just have these random story clips. Guy gets murdered. Hey, a puppy was born. A politician got elected. Abortion protest, and it's just sort of like this random clips where people don't actually think deeply about anything.
Right.
And it's
clickbait.
It's clickbait. It's just quick stimulation.
Before there was clicks.
Of emotional sort of stimulus.
Right.
But it's killing people's ability to think. And I think there's a huge thing that we need to think about there. But it seems to me that in some ways, maybe while that's all been going on, an Orwellian piece has also been sort of developing behind the scenes, again, with cancel culture, people actually losing their livelihoods, getting fired. Maybe they're not yet in concentration camps, but there's people in Canada right now being held against their will because they traveled. They traveled.
Yep.
Do you see? Are we heading into a more Huxleyan dystopia, Orwellian dystopia, or both?
I think both. I think they're two sides of the same coin. I think Orwell and Huxley were describing exactly the same phenomenon looked at from two different perspectives.
Okay.
That's where we are.
Okay. Y'all don't go nowhere.
Okay.
Hold on 1 second.
I want to know the
finish.
answer to this question.
More cross politic coming up in just a second. Hold on to that, Doc. Woo! Get your pen and paper ready.
Yeah, right.
Hi, I'm Robert Borton, CEO of Classical Conversations. Our most precious commodity is time. No one has ever lied on their deathbed wishing they had spent more time making money. They all wish they had spent more time creating a legacy. Our modern education system steals that legacy, steals that time from our children. That's why I'm passionate about homeschooling. That's why at Classical Conversations we want to give you more time to create that legacy, follow your passions, and glorify God. Visit classicalconversations.com for more information.
So excited over here.
You want to start the show or you want to? 3, 2. Stop counting. Just go. Welcome back.
He's so good at it.
To Cross Politics.
It's like, let's do it again.
It's like my favorite part of the show is when I get to count off. Hey, I want to let you know about the Psalm 124 Project. If you go to Psalm124project.com, you can learn about this cool scene with Pastor Dury in Scotland.
What?
He gets let out of prison sometime, I don't know, when was it, 18-something?
Yeah.
He's coming back into town. Pastor Doug Wilson told us about this in a recent sermon. He's preaching on Psalm 124.
It's 16-something.
Oh, okay, so during the Reformation. And somebody starts singing Psalm 124, which is about God's people being set free from a trap, like a bird getting set free from a fowler's net. And they start singing Psalm 124, and there's like thousands of people start singing in four-part
lining up
harmony,
on the street with them.
And lining up on the street. And the enemies of one of the enemies, chief enemies in the city, is terrified. He said it was more terrifying than anything that the Reformers had ever done was the sound of those Scottish Protestants belting out Psalm 124
in four-part harmony
at the top of their lungs. And so Pastor Doug had this idea, Psalm124project.com, and he said, let's do this electronically. Let's do a cyber version of that. All of God's people learning Psalm 124, singing it at the top of their lungs. There's a version there that we sang a few weeks ago and recorded for you
in two different places, in the field house and at Trinity.
And so if you want to be part of the resistance, sing Psalms, period. But if you want to be on board right now, in particular, learn Psalm 124 and upload a version of you singing it or singing it with your small group or your church or your friends. We'd love to hear you. Let's listen to one another and encourage one another.
We could go to war.
We could go to war.
For real.
Okay.
I'm for real.
He's very for real. Dr. Grant, just before the break, he said, you think we're heading into an Orwellian and Huxleyan dystopia. So, again, explain how that's the two sides of the same coin. And then the follow-up, of course, is, so now what? What do we do?
Yeah, so Orwell was afraid of totalitarianism.
Right.
Huxley was afraid of trivialization. But the truth is that always tyrants use the trivialization of culture to beat the people.
To be totalitarian.
Yes, and to beat them into submission, to flatten culture, to erase thought, analysis, and real resistance.
And this is classic abusive behavior. I mean, what moderns would, passive-aggressive abusive behavior is your abuser trivializes everything and then is coercing you and manipulating you.
Give an example of that.
I think
it's psychological warfare. You think about playing acid rock outside of Manuel Noriega's palace in Panama to beat him into submission. And then, after you've taken him to jail in Miami, continuing to use acid rock played at blaring levels, it just beats him down. So,
and it's frequently that then with randomly like maybe giving them something to drink or something to eat or something they want.
Does this?
And so think about this practically. You've got Biden, saying I just want unity, and then saying and you have to let transgenders in your bathrooms. So you're going to murder the babies. And here's your stimulus check.
Here's your stimulus
check. Now shut up.
So does it kind of have that same process of desensitizing? Jamming, converting. The whole,
that Bauckham likes to talk about.
Yeah.
It's overwhelming with so much information that you can't process the information.
Okay,
it is,
and then coercion at the same time.
And if there are blasphemy laws, that say you can't say these things.
Right.
There are certain things. I mean, you can always tell what the God of a society is by what you're not allowed to say.
Right.
Yep.
Blasphemy laws.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. So you're a racist, you're a patriarchalist, you're a white supremacist, whatever, and here's your stimulus check. Here's some more free porn.
Yeah. And we're going to give you, internet access so that you can you can binge watch The Bachelor if you want.
Right.
Cuomo's working on that.
That was
going to
be the same thing.
Yeah,
right.
That's right.
What's The Bachelor?
You don't want to know.
I'm so glad my pastor said that.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah.
So you think so that is happening. And, that
is happening. There's the pressure from one side and pressure from the other, and they're coordinated. They work together. You see it in big tech. You see it in Hollywood. You see it across the whole of the culture.
Right.
And it becomes, what Antonio Gramsci imagined, which was a saturation of culture to achieve ideological ends.
Now, do you think this is like intentional? They're they're masterminding and crafting this intentionally, or
is it just
our leaders are just not that smart, but they know how to use certain plays of the devil to kind of get their results, their desired results.
It's both. I promise you, Biden.
That's deep state.
Biden doesn't know.
He doesn't know what he probably doesn't know he's the president.
He's out of the basement. He knows that. But other than that,
I don't think he knows much.
But no, seriously, most of our frontline leaders, the people with great hair and teeth, they don't know these things. But but the people that are, drafting the legislation, the thousands of pages of legislation, the congressional aides, the real ideologues,
the bureaucrats,
they know what's going on.
Okay.
Somebody like Pete Buttigieg, he knows what's going on. Yeah. His father, Joseph Buttigieg, was the translator of the prison diaries of Antonio Gramsci, the inventor of cultural Marxism.
Right. Right, and if you remember,
I didn't know that.
Reading
professor at Notre Dame University, translator of the prison diaries.
Yeah.
This is the blueprint for things like Reveille for revolutionaries and all of that stuff.
I mean, you have people back in the late '60s, in the '60s, saying basically we're going to take down the patriarchy. This Christianity that runs this country and in the West is run by Christians and Christian men in particular.
And so we have this strategy of the robes.
Exactly.
Capture the robes of the judiciary, the robes of academia, the robes of the clergy. If we can capture the robes,
then we'll capture the culture.
We've got the culture.
So here we are, and I think you hinted at this earlier when you gave the example of the 14th century. Here we are in somewhat unprecedented times, but at the same time, not unprecedented at all.
Right.
These are tendencies, people have used manipulation for centuries, millennia. The devil has used it.
Think of the Borgias, think of the Medicis, that control.
I was just right on top of my mind.
but the totalitarian...
Do you know Luther named his dogs Borgia and Medici?
That's awesome. Is that how you remember that?
No, that's in my children's book.
That's really good.
You should get that.
I totally. So I won't be so dumb.
But so people have used this for millennia. The devil has used this for millennia. Both the coercion, the violence, the threat of pain and loss,
and the bread and circuses.
I mean,
it's Nero's strategy.
Money, food, porn, entertainment, trivialization. It's happened again and again.
It's centrifugal bumble puppies.
Exactly. So what do Christians do in that storm?
Get married, have babies, baptize them.
Come on, preacher.
Train them.
Hey.
Work hard at your calling. Build for the future. Lay foundations for buildings that you will never see completed.
Oh,
that's great rhythm too.
Yeah, he did that.
That was really good.
That is
lay foundations for things you will never see completed.
It's hard to swallow that.
Yeah,
it's hard to swallow that because of the saturation of the things that the culture that's on us right now. They never are discipling you to lay a foundation for the things that you will never see built.
Right.
They want you to embrace all of it and love it now, and it's all for you right now. Everything you do is for you.
Live a complete life.
And
here
so
on earth.
the Christian mind that hears this, they're Christians, but they're saturated and discipled by the world in this. Yeah. And so to get them to shake that off and to embrace what you just said, that's a hard sell.
One of my favorite cathedrals in the world is the Stephansdom in Vienna. It's right in the heart of Vienna. It took 400 years to build. It took 400 years to build because it was completely built by the townspeople.
Wow.
They would go to work in the morning, they would do their job, and then at night they would come, they'd meet their wives and children there, supper was brought, and they would work. Mm-hmm. Generation after generation after generation, knowing that they would never see it completed. It's part of the reason why it's...
For generations.
It's kind of a hodgepodge architecturally.
Okay.
And so it's not
400 years.
Yeah, 400 years. They changed their minds. The towers don't match. There's all. It's magnificent because it wasn't built by professionals. It was built by the town.
Wow.
over many generations.
Right.
It's extraordinary. That's what we're called to.
And how do we get our minds to make that jump to start thinking like that?
We teach the Bible.
Yeah.
Number one. Number two, we start practicing it by starting things that we know that we can never completely finish, that only our children or our grandchildren can finish. Yeah. When we do classical Christian education, we're not assuming that when a child gets their diploma that it's done.
Right.
That's good.
Right.
It's a lifelong process, and then it's a generations-long process. We're going to start seeing the real fruit of classical Christian education in 50 years.
Yeah. In some sense, it seems like we've kind of cheapened the idea of sanctification in all this and applied it to me personally, you know.
Right.
That's exactly right, Gabe.
Thinking of sanctification not just about me and my walk with the Lord, but generations of what it looks like in my family.
We're supposed to disciple the nations.
Right.
Meaning that it's not just individual. It's not just families.
Right.
And we're called to this grander vision.
Yeah.
It's a losing battle, as Chesterton says, a losing battle that God has called us to win.
Right. Yeah. Right. It seems like frequently the Orwellian vision scares Christians.
Right.
And then the Huxleyan vision is one where Christians sort of know it's like, you know, they know the porn is bad.
It's ucky.
And they know that certain parts of it are bad. But they also, you know, it's sort of like, but it's kind of fun. And
but my binge watching of Lost,
I'm
not
kind
so
of
much.
interested.
Yeah,
in it
but there are some good
curious.
shows on Netflix.
Yeah.
So can I watch some of those
How
shows?
many Christians love Game of Thrones, for instance?
Yeah, well,
You're probably the number one viewer.
We've had tangles. We've had tangles with Christians.
They
on
better
that. Yeah.
stop that.
Yeah.
But there's, you know, but you have this. I think, you know, again, fear, and then you don't want to be constantly in a place of fear and terror, and so you do want to sit down on a Friday night and hang out with your kids and watch something, but they know some of it's bad and so on. But you know, it seems like you've got those two fronts, where you have to resist the fear. Right. You have to say, no, God is in control. God is sovereign. Not Big Brother, not Biden, not Kamala Harris, not the Democrats, not the leftists, not the Gramscians. None of them are in charge. Jesus is Lord. And he watches over his people. And then you've got to push back against the trivialization, though, and you got to read a book.
Right. That's right.
You've got to
read it to your family.
Study the Bible.
That's right.
And recognize, I mean, even just the patience it takes to study something deeply. You were talking about classical Christian education. You know, you read books like, you know, Homer's Odyssey or Dante or, you know, Paradise Lost or something like this. And, you know, people spend their entire lives reading the Bible and studying it. Their entire lives studying these pieces of literature and poetry. And a lot of Christians don't have time for that.
Right.
They want something that's going to happen now. I want to put.
Is there an app for that?
Is there an app for that?
There is.
They want to know it now. They want the answers now. And the thing that this goes back to the discipleship and sanctification thing is it's pleased God. I mean, Jesus rose from the dead 2,000 years ago.
Right.
And God could have said, ta-da, it's all over. New heavens and new earth. But he didn't do that.
Right.
He said, now, Jesus is going to go to the right hand of the Father and rule and reign until all of the enemies of God have been put beneath his feet. Yep. And I'm going to send the Spirit.
Yep.
That's right.
And now I'm going to work it out. We're going to build
with all you pathetic people.
We're going to build a cathedral.
That's right.
Over the next millennia. That's going to be a hodgepodge millennia with towers sticking out everywhere, but it's going to be glorious and beautiful because my people will have built it. Amen. And they would have built it by spending their lives for things they never saw the full fruit of because that's what faith does.
Right.
Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind so that you may be able to prove what the will of God is.
So I think one of the takeaway things that I want to encourage people to do here is have at least one or two things you do in your life where you know that you are not seeing, you're not going to see the end of it, but you know is worth it.
That's right.
You know it's something good for your kids, for your grandkids. I mean, you should have more than one or two.
Right.
But at least have one or two.
Yeah.
And that's what discipleship is.
Yeah.
When you're pouring into a young man or a young woman,
yeah.
you know that you're not going to see the end result of it, but you invest and you pour in.
Right.
That's what starting a school is. That's what planting a church
that's
is.
Right.
That's what baptizing a baby is.
Come on now.
Right. Yeah.
Well, and the topic of your podcast, Resistance and Reformation, resistance kind of works at several levels. For one, resistance in trying to build the long haul. There's a resistant factor there where you're building things that you aren't going to see.
Yeah, resistance and reformation are actually two sides of the same coin. It's not two separate things. It's one thing.
And it seems like the resistant muscle, Christians have not built up very well.
That's
Whether
because we're so
mass
prosperous
or,
and comfortable, and it's been easy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So praise God for this moment. I mean,
Absolutely.
praise God that so many Christians have gotten rattled. Praise God.
There was so much of the old normal that needed to end.
It did.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's so true.
Right. Yeah. When God takes us through deaths and resurrections, there are things that need to die.
Yeah.
There are things that need to die, and we need to be seeing those things. That your apathy, the tendency to just scroll through Twitter or Facebook or whatever to be easily entertained. Some of those things need to die.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
They need to die, and we need to be giving ourselves to things that are more permanent, things that are going to last.
Could you give some books, maybe something that people can read right now that would help them kind of get over this hump? Because I think that there's a lot of people out there that are like, yes, I need to do something. Where do I read? What do I jump on? Do you have?
I mean, there's so much good stuff. I did not much like the Benedict option, but Live Not by Lies is a really, really helpful look at the current circumstance.
Roger.
Yeah. Okay. So that's a good place. I would say, the Christian Almanac, which goes through all of the calendar,
right,
365 days of the year, telling stories of what God has done in history on those particular days.
I'm reading that with my kids right now. Every night dinner, you can just there's just
really?
one page. Yeah, every night.
That's your book, right?
It's January. It has a date on it, and you just read 2 pages really.
Yeah,
and then you're done.
It's fantastic.
It's great stuff. Yeah.
I would also mention Amusing Ourselves to Death. I mentioned that earlier.
Ourselves to Death.
It's again aiming particularly maybe at a part of the threat that you didn't think about. A lot of us are thinking more Orwellian in some ways, but recognize that sort of the Orwellian tyrants in our day, they're using Huxleyan tropes. They're using Huxleyan moves to try to lure you into a sleep. And a bunch of people are waking up and saying, wait, how did I get here? How did I get this far down the road? And Neil Postman's Amusing Ourselves to Death is a really helpful place.
And he was not a believer.
Yeah.
He was a kind of a Jeffersonian Enlightenment kind of thinker, but incredibly incisive.
Yeah.
Don't you have a history series too that you've done?
I do. It's available on my website, georgegrant.net, and go through.
I think that is
literally from Genesis 1:1 all the way up to
huge.
the
Is
present.
it a video series or a audio?
There's some video and all of it's in audio.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
So,
I think
two of the segments, 4 segments. It goes antiquity, modernity, the Christendom, and American. And I think 2 are video and all 4 are audio.
Go get them.
as much Christian history as you can get.
GeorgeGrant.net.
Yeah. If you're single, get married. If you're married, have kids. If you have kids, go baptize them. Until next week, love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Love your neighbor as yourself. Go fight, laugh, and feast. This is Cross Politics.
Amen.
Thank you so much for being with us, Dr. Grant.
Thank you.
Blessings.
Thank you.
2020, God exposed America with a bunch of viral particles, a plague. God flicked and we buckled. Our political leaders shut down their states in fear. Our pastors abdicated the church as non-essential, and we have been scattered by petty, tyrannical resolutions and edicts into our homes or hiding our shame with masks. Businesses have been shut down by arbitrary non-essential labels. Strip clubs, pot shops, and abortion facilities remained open, while churches were threatened, regulated, and fined. First Amendment rights were trampled on as we Christians were arrested by despotic, unprincipled local governments. Citizens were harassed by unelected health districts, and communities were threatened in their houses by cops. This sounds like a third world country, a bad dream, but it is not. It is the new America. This America is ruled by fear. This America is ruled by opportunistic politicians who don't give a damn about you. This America breeds a compliant citizenry that cares more about their strip clubs and DoorDash deliveries, that cares more about their safety and their comforts than the truth that Jesus is King of Kings and that our freedoms are protected by the Constitution. This America is worse than King George III's America. It's time to take a stand, but to stand requires courage, and courage requires repentance. What we need is reformation and revival in our churches, in our families, in our communities, in our businesses, and in our government. Every square inch needs the blood of Jesus. We need to seize this moment where all our sins, fears, and failures have been exposed by God through this plague and gather to sing psalms, to feast, and to get strengthened, to be encouraged, and equipped to lead America back to Jesus, who is King of Kings and Lord of Lords. governor after governor instituted some sort of shutdown, ignoring your constitutional rights, there was one governor, one state, that did not buckle and join the crowd of governors driven by fear. Governor Christine Noem has stood strong through this pandemic. And so we are bringing our first annual Fight, Laugh, Feast rally to Rapid City, South Dakota, April 29th through May 1st. Join us in the land of the free and the home of the brave as we learn to love God, sing psalms, and defy tyrants.